On the last episode of Parametric Promethean, you thought you'd sign up to watch a software demo, but instead I made you watch 1 minute and 20 seconds of Tango the cat grooming herself. I know I promised an episode on sustainability, but Tango changed the order. Coming up, me ranting. If you're a computational designer and you've ever found yourself unemployed, you might be wondering why it is that when you go onto a job board, you see hardly any actual full-time computational designer positions advertised very often. You know, there's always things going up like architect, engineer, BIM coordinator, head of digital something or other, and some of these jobs might mention some of the software we use like Grasshopper or Dynamo, but they don't tend to do it in a way that that's your full-time thing. They see that as more like a extra side hustle bonus kind of thing on top of a whole lot of other work that you might not be qualified or suited to. Now sometimes that's because it's really hard to actually explain to HR people what we actually do. So in order to actually make a job description, it just gets put in the too hard basket, like climate change. I'm going to use that joke every single week until someone does something about climate change. Now, utilization is one of the sacred cows of traditional business management theology. Utilization! And I'm here to commit some heresy. Personally, I like to call it the billable hours fallacy. But sometimes people use other words. There's this one time I was trying to get this job and, they really wanted to hire me, but they couldn't persuade their boss to do it because of intimidation. Hey, Mike. Someone was having a chat with someone this week to talk about intimidation, and last I heard, someone was going to organise a call. I have a meeting with someone tomorrow morning, so I'll see where someone is with it and let you know. Thanks, someone, but who do you need to intimidate to make it happen? Did you mean breaking kneecaps, or something else entirely? Ha ha ha, sorry, that's utilization. This is like an actual text that I've screenshotted and I've blocked out everybody's names to protect their privacy. But this got me thinking, what is this utilization thing? Where did it come from? Why does it dominate our industry so much? Well, with me today is my special guest who is here to help explain it. Give it up for a former colleague of mine, Timothy the Dinosaur! Good evening. My name is Timothy the Dinosaur. Now, you may be more familiar with my little sister who's had a rather illustrious career in the arts. I myself am the CEO of a large multinational architecture or engineering company. Mike couldn't decide which when he wrote the script. Anyway, he's asked me here today to boss-explain to you the concept of utilization. Now, some of these upstart business analysts with their MBA to tell me that it's old-fashioned and I don't need to worry about it too much, but what would they know? I've been running this company the same way since the days of drafting boards, Antarctic rainforests, and effective unions. Now, if you come from a technical background like architecture or engineering, you probably didn't really learn that much about business. And most of you won't need to, unless you want to climb the greasy pole into management. As you know, we all live in a capitalist utopia where everything is perfect and there's nothing you can do about it. That means we believe in the market theory of value. I guess what something's worth, you guess what something is worth, everyone else does, and everyone is trying to guess what everyone else thinks something is worth. Well, actually, some of us have a different view on what value is. According to my labor theory of value, it's all about the time and effort or the socially necessary labor that goes into producing a commodity. I didn't even invent this, I just riffed it off David Ricardo. But the point is, market theory of value kind of distorts value for different people doing different kinds of work in different places. So in the same way that Adam Smith's mother cooked his dinner every night and he never had to, or somebody in Vietnam makes your shoes, that way you can work as an architect. It's the same thing. Shut up, Carl. Nobody takes you or communism seriously anymore. Capitalism won. Yeah, I guess you're right. Sad marks. So how does this affect us in the AEC industry in the 21st century? Well, when a project goes out to tender, the client will review all the applicants and say, who's the cheapest? Are they actually competent to deliver what they say they can do? Who's the fastest? Are the contract details favorable or will they screw me over? And most importantly of all, did they go to the same elite private school that I went to? If we're too cheap, there's a risk that our labor costs will exceed the revenue that we can bring in. Now, sometimes we do this anyway as a goodwill gesture, just to try and get the client to give us a better contract or maybe for the experience points like in a computer game. But we can't get away from that forever and survive financially. That means we have to guess what are our competitors going to pay and can we compete? So how does all this affect you, the worker, rather than the capitalist gambling on your time? Utilization is all about maximizing the amount of time that we, the company, can charge out to a client for your time. This is called a billable hour. From a services point of view, if you look at 1 hour of your time, there's probably 1/3 actually goes to your salary, 1/3 to overheads, and 1/3 left over as profit for us who own the company. That's what they call exploitation. From the employer's point of view, any hour that we can bill out to the client is great because it brings in revenue, no matter how shit the technician is or how unproductive they use that hour. On the other hand, any hour that we can't bill out, it's like a sword because we can't get any money for it, no matter how productive it is. Now, the best way to fudge the numbers so that the data looks good is to exclude all the days that you don't spend working from our utilization calculation. So that's your public holiday, your annual leave, your sick leave. That's how we reach a figure of about 84%. These are the numbers for New South Wales, where I live. It's probably different for you, depending if you're in France with lots of holidays, or America, where you only pretend to be a capitalist democracy. Now, let's assume a 40-hour work week, which excludes those who are lucky enough to work less, but also those who work more. Those companies that drain the blood from their victims with obnoxious amounts of overtime. So with those 40 hours, let's be generous and assume we're only going to lose a couple of hours of productive time to office stuff. Now that would be the timesheets, other admin, office meetings, HR, company events, reading company emails. And then we're going to lose a couple more from what I call the random curveballs that stop us actually getting our work done, like IT downtime or gridlock or cancellation, abortive work, blocked tasks, unplanned side quests. But the managers usually just pretend that stuff didn't happen and hide it into project time so the bosses and the clients don't notice. Now, these numbers will vary depending on the company, the job description, and seniority level, but let's assume an average for a typical AEC technician is something like this. Of course, timesheets aren't going to disambiguate the exact proportions, and you're probably getting distracted with email while drafting, so it all comes out as a projecty mushy mush. By the way, how did you make these pie charts, Mike? They're delicious. Did you use Excel? Fuck no. I'm a computational designer, not a bloody accountant. What do you take me for? I don't even have a Microsoft license. I just use Libre. It does pretty much the same thing, and you don't have to pay for it. Of course, I only really need to use Libre for the data itself. I'm not actually going to make my pie charts in there. No, what I want is proper vectors, and that's why I'm using Grasshopper. Now, as usual, I wasn't satisfied with any of the off-the-shelf pie charts, although there are a few out there, but there wasn't really any that I found gave me the kind of control over the data and the colors that I want, so I built my own. But first, we go through Bumblebee. You can still use this on a file that you've generated using Libre, you just have to save it as an Excel, like an XLSX. Alright, so first thing you do, you just put the file path to your pie charts, and then you put in the app, the workbook, the worksheets, gives you a list of them. You can filter for the one you want, and then you can read the data. Now here is where I found I had these empty values for some reason. Now I was hoping I could have just used the clean tree here, but it doesn't really do what it says on the box when it says remove empty here. just to prove it didn't work. And even though I've set empty to true, the empties are still in the list. So, you know, a little bit of Python. All you have to do is, if it's not an empty string, then output it to a list. So simple. I mean, half the time, most of these little components that don't do very much could be done much easier in Python. If you go to Food for Rhino, there's this Color Plus package, which one of the better ones it has is it lets you have color palettes. So you can see here all the standard Windows colors. Okay, so what happens if we randomly select a few of them? Let's grab another one of these guys, and we will plug it in that way. Okay, and then we come through and we go here, and it takes in the percentages, takes in the colors. Now, those have to match up or we're getting an error, but I've flagged that as an error, as a runtime message. We need a radius. We need a location. By default, it's just the origin. And we need a bake to set true. Otherwise, it's only just going to preview in the window like that. Okay, so that's not selectable because I haven't baked it yet. Okay, but what if I wanted different colors? What if I want to be more aesthetic about it? Well, here, then I'm just going to do ones that are kind of blue. Actually, you know what? The other day, I'm looking at Tango, the kitten from the last episode, and I see that she's got this blue patch on her fur. And I start Googling and I think, why is my cat blue? And I start freaking out because there's this disease called cyanosis. And I think, oh shit, this could be fatal. I better take her to the emergency ward. And we do, and you know, the nurse just laughs at us and said, no, she's just got a little bit of blue ink on her. I was like, oh, it's that blue cardboard box you've been playing with. Luckily we weren't charged. Anyway, kind of blue. So all we have to do here is we've got the colors that come in from here, and we're going to filter them so that they're less than the capital RGB and more than the lowercase RGB. And that is just a simple little for loop with some if statements. Again, a simple bit of Python does a lot of work. All right, now another one. We're only going to need the first 5 because we've only got 5 colors. And so again, a simple bit of Python. All that is for the range count, which is derived from the list length from that standard node. So that's how we only get 5 items out of, what's that, 20 something. Okay, so now if we plug this in here, hey, we've only got shades of blue now. All right, but what if we wanted more visually distinct colors? Let's try this one instead. Again, simple bit of Python. I have to credit whatever internet forum it was that I found this. You can Google it later. I can put in the notes or something. But I didn't need to invent it. I was able to quickly find something Python-based, just a little bit of Googling. It's a get distinct colors function. So all I did was it gives you the number of colors, and I've got a little option here to reorder. But first, let's just do it how it comes out. Hey, it came out because it's Pride Month. That's for all you LGBTQIAZ, however many letters in the acronym there are these days. But what if we didn't want it to look like a rainbow? Well, we could just click the true, and now it changes the order by shuffling the numbers around. Now, of course, the final step is just to hit that and bake. It's baked that through as hatches. And we've also got the outline of the curves. So from there, once you want to start going, you know, like partial pie charts, you can just copy it down and then delete the ones you don't want and use that to make the slides for an animation. That'll do. I'll dig up the prototype code that I made for that, and I'll leave it in the show notes if I remember. I'm not paying for that. Grasshopper is only for geometry. My primitive reptile brain couldn't possibly imagine how or why anybody might use it for something else. Now to overheads. Overheads are things like the cost of employing people to do stuff like admin, accounting, finance, IT, or in my case, making deals over lunch with the other 50-something-year-old white men who run Australia. It also includes capital expenditure like buying or renting office space, computers, and coffee machines. But these costs are relatively flat regardless of whether the worker is junior or senior. Technicians are profit-making meatbags, not overheads. According to theory, capacity utilization is measured as actual output over maximum output times 100 to give a percentage. So the closer we can get you to 100, the more profit we archaic monsters can squeeze out of your slowly aging pathetic human bodies. With more experience, a worker is expected to either be able to do a larger variety of tasks or the same tasks as a junior would do more efficiently. They can therefore claim a bigger slice of the pie as their wage or have their labour charged out as a higher rate. So, us employers build a rational calculus based on the number of years and the type of experience, what we have budget for and what we need done, and then make hiring decisions based on gut instinct. Thus, the labour market more or less sorts itself out, where someone who could be trained up quickly, like that British backpacker at reception, is at the bottom of the food chain. Someone who takes many years to educate, like an architect or engineer, costs much more, but that's the whole point of the business existing. And those of us who win the Hunger Games of office politics become company directors. However, supply-demand dynamics also play a factor, so labour markets tighten and loosen depending on how much construction activity is going on. When times get tough and the contract for projects aren't coming in, we have to make budget cuts. So do we cut expenditure on office drinks and cake? No, we make redundancies. Do we sack the people who won't have anything to do if there aren't enough projects to go round? Well, that might make logical sense, but oh, how do we choose which child to sacrifice when we love you all like a family? Do we sack the people who failed to persuade the client to give our company the contract? Of course not. That's us, the bosses. So those with the lowest utilization are the softest target. How about these annoying R&D people with their incomprehensible nerdy nonsense? These young computational designers like Mike confuse the hell out of us. They just don't fit the mold of a service-oriented business. Too much of their time isn't billable to a client, so we don't consider it utilized. Yet, they are technicians, so they aren't exactly an overhead. How the hell do we explain all this to HR? We don't know what to do with them, how to fund them, or how to measure their success, so we just put them in the too hard basket, like climate change.
Apartarte de mi camino, estúpido y viejo lagarto. Yo soy señor asteroide algorítmico.
Even your own pie chart show you'll probably not get to 90% unless you're very lucky. And that doesn't leave much time for much else. And what would that much else be? Sometimes businesses have a don't ask, don't tell kind of policy, where the architectos or ingenieros do a bit of computational design on the side and put it in with the project time. However, that doesn't give the business very good feedback on what's actually happening. They have no idea what kind of difference it made, and if you have a global company, that increases the chance of duplication of effort where the company is paying twice for the same thing. And what if we let you do it openly, but only sometimes? That can work okay at the graduate level, but when you have a señor arquitecto or a señor ingeniero, and then they're getting paid a señor level wage, but they're only able to do junior level computational design, I mean like they string a few nodes together in Grasshopper, but they don't know how to code properly. That is a local way to blow out your project budget. It also creates opportunity costs, where they could be doing the things that the juniors can't but instead they are doing the computational design that the computational designer, who is an expert full-time, should be doing instead. The more projects somebody is committed to, the more the utilization ideology introduces gridlock that stops the decisions getting made and delays the delivery. What if we let you computational designers do your own job, but only sometimes? Sometimes companies do get computational designers to do other people's jobs, like maybe a little bit of architectural drafting or writing a report if you're in a consultancy. However, not only does that come at the opportunity cost of getting good within our own profession, it also means that we're probably not going to be as good at it as someone who actually has that expertise and wants to be doing that kind of work as their main job. The whole point of specialization of labor is that everybody gets good at one thing because nobody can be an expert at everything. Don't get me wrong, it could definitely be a good idea for a junior to get some Revit drafting experience. It will help him develop some empathy for his colleagues, identify opportunities for automation, and get to know the Revit API. However, don't expect that he's going to continue with this and get as good at it as someone else who wants to document. Alright, well what if we outsourced it to a software developer? Lots of companies that don't have the computational designers in-house will outsource the work. In fact, this is not uncommon across other industries too, and maybe they have an app but they don't consider software development a core part of their business. However, this also means that you will never retain full control, you will never own the IP, and it'll be harder to learn for future projects. Software also needs to be maintained, so when it changes, you need to be able to update. If you do go down this path, make sure you keep at least some competent developers in-house to cross-check the work of the company you have outsourced to. We are a product-based profession. We are a little bit like software developers, but the key difference is they're more generalized. You know, they do things like web development or databases, and sure, maybe some of us can do a bit of that on the side, but the main difference is we are specialists in AEC software. We can build things faster and a bit more hacky, but we get the job done. Well, what if we build it to a project internally as a service? See, some companies do try to run computational design as a service billable to the client or internally within the company between different project teams. However, most of the work computational designers do can be recycled and reused on other projects. So how do you justify the cost burden on one project team if another one in the future or on the other side of the planet will get that work for free? Create a perverse incentive to either not innovate or keep it a secret within the local team. This is another source of duplication of effort across your business. Let's say that your computational designers have developed a process which is robust and stable enough to operate without many changes. Sure, we could be running that service, but so could some other technician. The whole point of automation is to get rid of the tedious manual work that takes up all your time. The more of this you can get rid of, the more time you free up for upskilling, and the more processes your technicians can learn, and the more efficient they can get. The more time that you have your computational designers running services, the less value you're going to get from us. We need to be at the cutting edge of innovation because that's where we're going to shine the brightest. We're like utilization Gnostics, taking traditional business management theology and flipping it upside down to reveal a deeper spiritual truth.
Utilization is the holiest measure of productivity.
Hey, I had this cool, weird idea that'll blow your fucking mind. Are you ready to hear it? What if the priests lied to us and the spiritual entities that they said were the good guys were actually the bad guys the whole time? What if they are just trapping us in this endless cycle of birth, suffering, death, and rebirth with false promises of a heaven, all to hide from us a deeper spiritual truth about the universe? Whoa. Shut up, Parametrios. Nobody takes you or Gnosticism seriously anymore. Mainstream Christianity won. No? You don't like that idea? So agnostic. But won't that reduce the number of billable hours and then we can't charge the client as much? The whole point of automation is to reduce the number of hours. You still get to charge the same as you would if you did it manually. You just get to deliver faster and cheaper because your labor costs are lower, and then you increase profitability. So then you get the profit and you reinvest back in the business. More automation, more efficiency. You have a smaller, smarter cohort of staff who stay for a longer period. If you don't do this, your competitors will, and then they be able to want to cut you in the tender, and you don't get the projects. If you don't get the projects, you're gonna have to make redundancies. Then you have this big office with all these empty desks. You have your redundancy costs, and then, maybe you get lucky and the boom come back. Then you gotta spend all this money on recruitment, and then you gotta train everybody. It's a crazy way to run a business. So if you aren't doing work on a project, then what the fuck are you doing with my time and money? We would be closest to fully utilized if we were using as close as 100% of our time towards R&D. However, we're still going to lose the same time to the kind of office stuff and probably more time to the random curveballs because we're going to have higher demands on the IT system. Also, a lot of our time ends up going into things like strategy documents or developing the training materials, running training sessions, coordinating with IT, fighting the bureaucracy, mining the legacy of people that came before us to see if it's useful. We don't have so much time. We gotta plan our work before we can even do the work, and we gotta coordinate with each other. We gotta do meetings. We're very busy. If we don't do this stuff, nobody gonna do it because everybody's too busy on the projects. The more disorganized your company or the further behind it is, the more of this shit we gotta do before we can actually get to deploying our work on the real projects for the external clients. It's a little bit like where the BIM managers were when you first started transitioning from CAD, They gotta build like the Revit families and the standards and set everything up. And then only later, once they got that done, because they actually help people out on their real projects. So what do you put on your timesheets? I mean, most of the time the companies don't even give us time codes that make any sense compared to what we do. Sometimes we just put it down as admin, or sometimes we book it onto a project time. Back to Mike. One time there was a company where they made me put my time down on a project that I didn't even work on and finish before I got there because they just didn't have a time code for me. I said, that's absurd. Like, you're getting me to lie on my timesheet in front of the finance team that are like right there listening to us have this conversation. I mean, the whole point of timesheets is to give business the feedback on what it's actually doing so you can better plan your work, but you're just going to fill it with lies. Anyway, at that point I was like, whatever. Fuck it, just put my time down as whatever. I don't care anymore. You could make my job title the algorithmic asteroid or whatever. I don't give a damn anymore. Just please let me get on with my job. Alright, well, how should we employ you then? Look, for our time at least, utilization, just don't worry about it. Other technicians, sure, whatever, I don't care. But for us, measure our productivity based on what we produce. Don't worry about whether the hours are billable to an external client. Give us a dedicated R&D budget that's not attached to projects. Not attached to the timeframes, not attached to the budgets. Help us clear the bureaucratic barriers and the IT blockers that slow us down from getting stuff done. Employ senior level computational designers to run your team. We're the ones who are going to be able to best plan out the work, and we know what's possible and we know the best ways to do it. Schedule in plenty of upskilling time for your other technicians. If we can get them to at least a graph operator level where they can run our processes, then you won't need us to be running those as services. Accept some level of failure. Some of what we're going to do is not going to give you bang for buck. but maybe the learning we get from it will help with a future project. On average, the successes should offset the failures. Above all, be patient. Change takes time. You're not going to get immediate results out of this. Often it's, a matter of lining up all the stakeholders in the company, the IT systems, all of that before we can actually deploy our work. So you've got to hang in there for the long term, or you just won't get the benefit. Alright, algorithmic asteroid, you win. I'm evolving into a little cutie mammal now. All pie is good pie. Okay, so obviously I just pull those numbers out of my ass. I don't have access to people's timesheets. I'm not a proper business analyst. People do entire PhDs trying to figure this stuff out. And are they any better than my random guesses? I did, put out the feeler a week ago, see if people would send me any data. I had a few conversations with various people in the industry, former colleague, who you are, and we were talking about that time we both worked in an office where everybody was like competing over the limited number of hours, and so it was like this really toxic workplace because everybody was constantly fighting for the limited project budget instead of working together. And that's how it is. I think this utilization ideology is not good for our industry. But let me know what you think. Send me some data. On the next episode, maybe I actually will do the sustainability one I promised last time.